Well, folks, before we jump into the news, just want to say happy Veterans Day and thank you, obviously, to everyone who has served in uniform in the United States military. And you're all making a sacrifice, and you have made sacrifices none of the rest of us made. We owe you our undying gratitude, particularly on Veterans Day. So once again, thank you so much for fighting for this country, for defending this country, for making everything we have possible. Alrighty, folks, we have winning on the menu. We'll get to all the latest Trump wins in a moment. First, Am I Racist smashed records in theaters as the decade's #1 documentary. Now it's streaming only at Daily Wire Plus with exclusive extras. You want to see it all? A Daily Wire Plus membership is your ticket. Sign up at dailywire.com/subscribe. Use code Trump to get 47% off a new annual membership. Alrighty, so we have two big Trump wins right off the bat. So Trump has now tapped Tom Homan as his new border czar. Tom Homan is, of course, the former acting ICE chief. In a social media post late on Sunday, Trump said that Tom Homan would be, quote, in charge of all deportation of illegal aliens back to their country of origin. He said, I've known Tom for a long time. There's nobody better at policing and controlling our borders. Likewise, Tom Homan will be in charge of all deportation of illegal aliens back to their country of origin. Congratulations to Tom. I have no doubt he will do a fantastic and long-awaited job. So here is just your reminder that Tom Homan is somebody who really stands up for the principles of a closed border and for legal immigration. Here is Tom Homan, for example, facing down 60 Minutes over some of the deportation issues back in the day.
We have seen one estimate that says it would cost $88 billion to deport 1 million people a year.
I don't know if that's accurate or not.
Is that what American taxpayers should expect?
What price do you put on national security? Is that worth it?
Is there a way to carry out mass deportation without separating families?
Of course there is. Families can be deported together.
Okay, so if you thought that Trump was not serious about deporting a large number of people, he's serious about deporting a large number of people. Tom Homan is the most serious person for border czar that we've seen in generations in the United States. Here, for example, is Tom Homan facing down the venerable intellect Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in Congress just a few years back.
Mr. Homan, your name is on this. Is this correct?
Yes, I signed that memo.
So you are the author of the family separation policy?
I am not the author of this memo.
You're not the author, but you signed the memo.
Yes, a zero tolerance memo.
So you provided the official recommendation to Secretary Nielsen on for the United States to pursue family separation.
I gave Secretary Nielsen numerous recommendations on how to secure the border and save lives.
But it says here that you gave her numerous options, but the recommendation was option 3, family separation.
What I'm saying, this is not the only paper where we've given the Secretary numerous options to secure the border and save lives.
And so the recommendation, of the many that you recommended family separation.
I recommended zero tolerance.
Which includes family separation.
The same as is with every U.S. citizen parent gets arrested when they're with a child.
Zero tolerance was interpreted as the policy that separated children from their
If I get arrested for DUI and I have a young child in the car, I'm going to be separated. When I was a police officer in New York and I arrested a father for domestic violence, I separated that father from his
Mr. Homan,
family.
with all due respect, legal asylees are not charged with any crime.
When you're into the country illegally, it's violation 8 United States Code 1325.
Seeking asylum is legal.
If you want to seek asylum and go through the port of entry, do it the legal way.
So that guy is the new border czar. Get ready, gang. Get ready. Trump was not joking when he was talking about closing the border and taking seriously the issue of illegal immigration. That's not Trump's only announced pick over the weekend. He also announced Elise Stefanik would be his choice for the UN ambassador role. That's a great job. I mean, honestly, if you have to pick any job in American government, UN ambassador is a fantastic job because that is a job where you have a very nice apartment in New York City and then you go over to the UN, which is a repository of all human scum, and you yell at dictators all day. It's a pretty phenomenal job. Elise Stefanik happens to be an excellent candidate for this position. You'll recall her standing up to anti-Semitism on college campuses just a few months ago. Here she was versus a bunch of university heads, asking them whether it in fact was anti-Semitic to allow chants like "from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free," calling for the elimination of the state of Israel. Here was Stefanik just a few months back.
I will ask you one more time. Does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Harvard's rules of bullying and harassment? Yes or no?
Anti-Semitic rhetoric.
And is it anti-Semitic rhetoric?
Anti-Semitic rhetoric when it crosses into conduct that amounts to bullying, harassment, intimidation, That is actionable conduct, and we do take action.
So the answer is yes, that calling for the genocide of Jews violates Harvard Code of Conduct, correct?
Again, it depends on the context.
It does not depend on the context. The answer is yes, and this is why you should resign. These are unacceptable answers across the board.
Claudine Gay of Harvard, who was the person on the other side of that clip, she ended up losing her job over it, also thanks to the intervention of Chris Rufo, who uncovered a bunch of plagiarism, which gave Harvard the excuse to boot her out the door. So these are all excellent picks. Now, Trump did come out, and he said that Mike Pompeo, who is his former Secretary of State, and Nikki Haley, his former UN ambassador, would not be part of the administration. There's a lot of speculation this means a sea change from Trump foreign policy 1. Okay, let me make very clear. 75 million people voted for Donald Trump's foreign policy. That is what they voted for. They did not vote for a completely different foreign policy that radically shifts how Trump did foreign policy in term 1. The best thing about Trump 1 was his foreign policy. The reason that Pompeo and Haley aren't in is because they personally pissed off Trump. Let's be clear about this. Nikki Haley ran against Donald Trump and proceeded to say a bunch of very not nice things about Donald Trump. And so Trump wasn't going to have her in the administration anyway. Mike Pompeo, of course, had been questioned after January 6th, and he had said some things that presumably Donald Trump did not like very much after January 6th. And then he also suggested after the Mar-a-Lago raid that might have been legally appropriate. And so there are some serious questions about sort of the personal relationship between Mike Pompeo and Donald Trump. But anybody who is seeking to shift that into Donald Trump is now going to pursue, say, Pat Buchanan's foreign policy. I'm not seeing the indicators of that from any of the people who are currently being talked about for high positions in the administration. In fact, Bill Hagerty, who is being discussed as the possible Secretary of Defense or possible Secretary of State, he was on the national TV shows. Hagerty is, I would say, more conciliatory on the Ukraine issue than some people who are more hawkish like I am. But Hagerty points out that when it comes even to issues like Ukraine, Trump will find a way to get that done because Trump does not want the United States or its allies to lose in that exchange. Here was Bill Hagerty talking about Trump and Ukraine.
So Hungary's prime minister has said that Donald Trump has told him he will cut off support to Ukraine. You are saying here, I think, in the new Congress, there will be no more aid to Ukraine.
I've certainly not voted for any aid.
I know
you
haven't.
And I think President Trump will find,
is that the mandate?
President Trump will find a way to deal with this. I'm not going to get ahead of him. I'm certain that he's going to find a way to navigate this that's in the interest of the American people and will stop the carnage. Look, what's happened in Ukraine is terrible. People are dying. They continue to die.
Again, that's a very Trumpy foreign policy, right? He's going to move toward stopping this. He's going to do so without increasing the amount of aid to Ukraine in any market way. But it's also true that both J.D. Vance and President Trump have suggested that in the absence of any sort of agreement, the United States can't just let Vladimir Putin walk into Kyiv. Hagerty also pointed out that we are seeing sea changes in the Middle East as soon as Trump was elected. As soon as Trump was elected, Qatar decided that they were going to expel Hamas terrorists from their country. Now, those Hamas terrorists are probably going to end up in Turkey, and it would behoove the United States and its allies in Europe to make Turkey pick whether it likes Hamas or whether it likes being a member of NATO. But here was Bill Hagerty talking about the environment in the Middle East shifting because Donald Trump is president, which is clearly and obviously true.
I think what we've seen just break out again in the past 70 plus hours since President Trump won the election. Hamas is now looking for total peace. So I think the environment has totally changed.
What do you mean?
No, they've announced they'd like to see peace. They'd like to see peace in Gaza. Let's see where that leads.
You believe that there will be a hostage deal negotiated under President Trump?
I'd like to see what Hamas means by this statement, but it seems that the entire environment is shifting right now because they see new leadership coming in, and I'm encouraged by that, and I think we'll have new opportunities to. Again, President Trump was able to deliver peace through strength. I think that's on the way, and I'm optimistic of what it might lead to.
That is correct, obviously. Peace through strength is Trump's byword. I mean, he was on this show a couple of weeks before the election, and he rejected the sort of neo-isolationism in favor of peace through strength. That is what 75 million people voted for. By the way, even on Ukraine, the Washington Post is reporting President-elect Trump spoke with Russian President Vladimir Putin on Thursday, the first phone conversation between the two men since Trump won the election. During the call, which Trump took from Mar-a-Lago, he advised the Russian president not to escalate the war in Ukraine and reminded him of Washington's sizable military presence in Europe. And this is not a surprise. Trump has said this stuff openly. Pretending that he hasn't is really, really silly. The two men discussed the goal of peace on the European continent. Trump expressed an interest in follow-up conversations to discuss the resolution of Ukraine's war soon. The call, which had not been previously reported, comes amid general uncertainty about how Trump will reset the world's diplomatic chessboard. Here's what's going to happen. Trump is going to use the credible threat of force in order to ramp down conflict around the world. That is the thing that is going to happen. Okay, so just get ready for it, because that's precisely what is going to happen. As the Wall Street Journal points out, the U.S. hasn't been feared enough overseas during the Biden administration, according to Trump's advisors. By showcasing American economic and military might, the second Trump presidency should bring peace, or at a minimum, prevent further escalation in Ukraine, the Middle East, and beyond. Trump's former national security advisor, Robert O'Brien, who has also been discussed as a possible Secretary of Defense or National Security Advisor or Secretary of State, says it's going to be a return to peace through strength. Deterrence is going to be restored. American adversaries understand that the things they've gotten away with over the last 4 years will not be tolerated any further. Well, O'Brien obviously is correct. Let me tell you something else that's correct, but something that's harder to stomach. Death. So here's the thing about the holidays. It's the heart of family traditions. You know, those precious moments of being together, whether you're lighting the menorah or decorating the tree or just sharing a meal. The traditions matter. But if you thought about what happens to your family's traditions if you get hit by a plane, that's exactly why you need to protect your family's future and your peace of mind with Policy Genius. With Policy Genius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million in coverage. Some options are 100% online and let you avoid those unnecessary medical exams. Policy Genius makes finding and buying life insurance simple. They give your loved ones a financial safety net they can use to cover debts and routine expenses, or even invest that money to earn interest over time. Their digital tools let you compare quotes from America's top insurers side by side for free with no hidden fees. Their licensed support team is there to help you get exactly what you need. They answer questions, handle paperwork, and advocate for you throughout the entire process. Even if you already have life insurance through work, it might not protect all your family's needs, and probably won't follow you if you leave your job. Join thousands of happy Policy Genius customers who have left 5-star reviews on Google and Trustpilot. Secure your families tomorrow so you can have peace of mind today. Head over to policygenius.com/Shapiro. Get your free life insurance quotes. See how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/Shapiro. Also, probably the number one question I get from listeners lately is, how can I get in the conservative fight? Well, it's really important to know where your dollars are going. Most credit cards are funneling millions of bucks to left-wing causes and candidates, hoping you don't actually notice. Now you have a choice. Coin is America's conservative credit card. Find them at COIGN.com. With every single transaction, you advance conservative causes and charities at no cost to you. Coin empowers you to take back our country with every single swipe. It's a great-looking credit card. You'll take pride in using it. It's bright red with "We the People" on the front. Coin works everywhere Visa is accepted. It comes with 100% U.S.-based customer service and consumer protections. Thousands of patriots are earning cash back while fighting the left-wing agenda. The demand is so high, there's now a wait list. It's a movement. Join it. Go to COIGN.com and join the wait list today. Be sure to select Daily Wire in the How Did You Hear About Us section, because that helps them and it helps us as well. Terms apply. Go to coin.com/disclosures for full details. Once again, COIGN.com, and sign up today. So again, this administration is shaping up beautifully at this point. What people voted for is what they're going to get. Donald Trump made promises. Those promises are going to be fulfilled. And those promises involve, for example, actual peace breaking out throughout the world because of the credible threat of the use of military force, and because President Trump is willing to build a big, beautiful military, and because Donald Trump is not shy about leveraging those credible threats in order to achieve peace in the world. That was the story of Trump 1. It's the reason, again, 75 million people voted for him. That would be the reason. Not for a radical shift in foreign policy that looks more like Joe Biden than like Donald Trump. Donald Trump has a very clear and consistent Trump policy. Okay, the Trump doctrine, if there were to be one, is don't cross that line or we will punch you in the face. That is the Trump doctrine, and that is a great doctrine. That is an excellent doctrine. And meanwhile, a late-breaking scandal, the Daily Wire is reporting. Leif LeMahieu is the reporter on this. This is a huge story. The entire mainstream media picked up on it and then basically plagiarized the story. This originally came from Leif over at Daily Wire. He says, quote, a federal disaster relief official ordered workers to bypass the homes of Donald Trump's supporters as they surveyed damage caused by Hurricane Milton in Florida, according to internal correspondence obtained by the Daily Wire and confirmed by multiple federal employees. Now, let me just repeat that again. FEMA officials told workers not to help people who had Donald Trump signs on their front lawn, basically, if their homes were damaged by Hurricane Milton in Florida. A FEMA supervisor told workers in a message to, quote, avoid homes advertising Trump as they canvassed Lake Placid, Florida to identify residents who could qualify for federal aid. That supervisor's name is Marnie Washington. The supervisor relayed this message both verbally and in a group chat used by the relief team, multiple government employees told the Daily Wire. Apparently, the government employees told Daily Wire at least 20 homes with Trump signs or flags were skipped from the end of October and into November due to the guidance, meaning they were not given the opportunity to qualify for FEMA assistance. Images shared with the Daily Wire show houses were skipped over by workers who wrote in the government system messages such as, Trump sign, no entry per leadership. That's absurd, insane, and un-American. That's crazy. First of all, you're in the state of Florida. An awful lot of people here voted for Donald Trump. An awful lot of people here like Donald Trump. Trump flags are everywhere. I live down here, okay? Trump, this is Trump country. You know what's about MAGA country? Florida is MAGA country. So the fact that FEMA officials were telling their lower downs to avoid going to houses with, say, a Trump sign or a Trump flag to allow people to apply for FEMA aid if their home had been damaged is the most un-American trash I've heard of in recent memory. According to the Daily Wire, it is unclear whether the same guidance was issued elsewhere in the country. The employees were part of a Department of Homeland Security surge capacity force team, meaning they volunteered from other DHS agencies to help an understaffed FEMA as it dealt with the second major hurricane in a span of just a few weeks. One of the employees said, quote, "I know they're short-staffed. I thought we could go help and make a difference. When we got there, we were told to discriminate against people. It's almost unbelievable to think somebody in the federal government would think that's okay." The employee said, quote, "I volunteered to help disaster victims, not discriminate against them. It didn't matter if people were black, white, Hispanic, for Trump, for Harris. Everyone deserves the same amount of help." Now, again, this also came amidst complaints about the response to Hurricane Helene in rural areas across the country, in Tennessee, in North Carolina. According to the Daily Wire, the FEMA agents ordered not to help houses with Trump signs were operating in Highlands County, a deep red area located in south central Florida that backed Trump 70-30 on Tuesday. It was hit with tornadoes, torrential wind, and rain and flooding when Hurricane Milton hit back in October. In the chat, this particular FEMA employee said it would be, quote, "best practice to avoid homes advertising Trump." No explanation was given for the guidance. That also included recommendations like telling workers to, quote, "practice de-escalation and preventative measures and to avoid high-salt diets and coffee." Now, again, this is insane. Apparently, the chat was just filled with pictures of homes with Trump flags saying, quote, "per leadership, no stop Trump flag." One team member wrote in a complaint filed to DHS about the guidance, quote, "if they had damage or lost power for over 36 hours, it was my duty to inform them of benefits to which they are entitled through FEMA." Washington is the disaster survivor assistance crew leader for Highland County. She did not respond to multiple phone calls or an email seeking comment on the guidance. FEMA, by the way, did acknowledge that this happened. Chad Hershey, Washington's FEMA supervisor, told Daily Wire the agency is looking into the situation. Quote, "we are aware of it. We are taking proper action in this situation currently." After publication of the story, a FEMA spokesperson told the Daily Wire it was, quote, "deeply disturbed and horrified by the employee's actions and that it has, quote, taken extreme actions to correct the situation. While we believe this is an isolated incident," the spokesperson said, "we have taken measures to remove the employee from their role and are investigating the matter to prevent this from happening ever again. The employee who issued this guidance had no authority and was given no direction to tell teams to avoid these homes, and we are reaching out to the people who may not have been reached as a result of this incident. This is a matter that we take extremely seriously. We are doing everything we can to make sure all survivors receive support from FEMA. To date, we've helped over 365,000 households impacted by both Hurricanes Helene and Milton in the state of Florida. We're horrified that this took place. We have taken extreme actions to correct this situation." And apparently Washington was fired. By about October 30th, apparently, Washington had started walking back the instructions about skipping Trump supporters' homes, according to one of the federal employees. The relief worker said Washington denied homes were being skipped after a meeting with other FEMA administrators. So this person also lied about all of this. Totally insane story. Here, for example, is one hurricane worker named Adam Smith blasting the culture of fears in salvage operations in Florida with FEMA. Blasting the culture of fear at FEMA.
I want first to get your reaction when you heard this news about FEMA and avoiding what appears to be some 20 homes in Florida.
Well, to say that I was surprised would be a lie. I don't necessarily want to demean or demonize every FEMA employee or worker that's out there. I think there are a lot of them that have a good heart that want to help people. The question that it leads me to is to ask the question of what sort of culture has been established in order for, FEMA personnel on the ground, or leadership for that matter, to provide this sort of instruction to FEMA personnel that want to provide help. And more so, I had an interaction with local FEMA officials as well, and they wanted to help people. And what was the interesting thing is it was stated that, hey, we can't have our fingerprints on this, which I think it leads back to the actual question, which is, what sort of culture and what sort of fear is there in place at some of the lower levels of FEMA personnel, where they're afraid they're going to lose their job if they don't speak up against actions that are blatantly not aligned with what the organization is supposed to be doing?
When we talk about the deep state here, that is what we were talking about. You're talking about low-level and mid-level employees who are changing the policies of the United States government in order to benefit particular sides of the aisle. It is horrible and it is ugly. The Oversight Committee is going to be grilling the FEMA chief over the directive to skip Trump homes. That's what the House Committee on Oversight and Accountability announced on Saturday. They'll be holding a hearing to investigate FEMA after our Daily Wire report. Committee Chairman James Comer sent a letter to FEMA Administrator Deanne Criswell asking she show up to testify before lawmakers November 19th. Comer wrote, quote, "This hearing will address FEMA's response to recent major natural disasters, including Hurricanes Helene and Milton, and permit members to investigate recent reports a FEMA official instructed relief workers to bypass hurricane-impacted homes displaying campaign signs for President Trump." Governor Ron DeSantis, for his part, this happened in his state. He put out a tweet saying, quote, "The blatant weaponization of government by partisan activists in the federal bureaucracy is yet another reason why the Biden-Harris administration is in its final days. At my direction, the Division of Emergency Management is launching an investigation into the federal government's targeted discrimination of Floridians who support Donald Trump. New leadership is on the way in D.C. I'm optimistic that these partisan bureaucrats will be fired." Again, one of them already has been fired, but this is just another example of how a gigantic, huge, enormous centralized bureaucracy in the United States leads to the possibility of serious sin. It's a real problem. Meanwhile, the media demonstrating what they are. So, this story is quite insane. After our Daily Wire story went viral, NBC News reporter Myrna Al-Sharif, formerly of CNN, completely ripped off the report and then completely effed up the report as well. Because apparently, according to Brent Scher, who is one of our editors over here, he points out this story for NBC News is painfully lazy and bad. Notes that a FEMA employee was fired, but then acts like it's a complete mystery what actually happened. No idea who did what they did, only mainstream outlet not to link to the actual story. And then Myrna Al-Sharif tweeted back, quote, "Sorry, Brent Scher, are your feelings hurt because I didn't link to the DW story? Stay mad." That prompted other people to pile on her. Sora Bamari said, "Why are you acting like this? You've presented a weirdly truncated version of the story. You shouldn't be proud of the fact that people turning to you would learn a lot less than those turning to other outlets. In the long term, that's bad for NBC and bad for the truth." And Myrna Al-Sharif said, "Oh, look, it's troll final boss. I know you guys get off at making bleep up online to suit your agenda, but that's not my game. I get my info from official sources. I'll leave the alternative methods to you guys. Have fun." And Sora replied, "I addressed you politely without insult. Even at left of center outlets, I promise that you won't get far acting like this in response to criticism." And then she wrote back, "Good. Don't address me ever at all. You are not fit to criticize me. Bye." Steve Guest tweeted at her, "Admit it, you're being a hack." And this reporter for NBC News tweeted back, "The hack is your mama." I'm sorry. This is a reporter for NBC News? I can't imagine why your credibility is in the toilet. You rip off a story that we report first at Daily Wire. You completely botch the story. And then when you're called on it, you do your mama jokes. One person tweeted at her, quote, "You absolutely lack the journalistic bona fides to look up anyone's mom. You dumb F, grow up." And then she wrote back, "You first, dumb." Like, what in the what? Daily Wire's Mary Margaret Olahan called on Al-Sharif to log off, and she wrote back, "You first, babes." Then, of course, she did log off. So she deleted her Twitter account. So solid stuff there from NBC News. Again, I cannot imagine why more and more Americans are signing off when it comes to the left-wing media. Man, they are bad at their job. Well, this NBC News reporter seems like she probably should lose her job because she's bad at it. But here's the thing. There are lots of people all over the country who probably need to be replaced. Some might be at your company. You need better employees or just new employees. You need to increase your hiring base. Well, choosing the right candidate for any office is a giant responsibility. If you're hiring and you want to find your best candidates for your office, you need ZipRecruiter. Right now, you can try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com/dailywire. ZipRecruiter is the hiring site employers prefer the most based on G2 ratings. The moment you post your job, their smart technology immediately starts showing it to qualified candidates. No wasteful bureaucracy, no endless waiting, just powerful matching technology that finds you top talent fast so you don't waste time or money. You can even invite the best candidates to apply directly because in business, unlike in government, efficiency actually matters. Remember, if you want to find the right candidate for your office, you need ZipRecruiter. See why 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the very first day. Just go to this exclusive web address right now to try ZipRecruiter for free. ZipRecruiter.com/dailywire. Again, that's ZipRecruiter.com/DAILYWIRE. ZipRecruiter.com/dailywire. ZipRecruiter is indeed the smartest way to hire. Also, let's talk about something that affects all of us who are responsible, hardworking Americans. Taxes. The October 15th deadline has passed. Are you prepared for what's coming? Do you owe back taxes? Are your tax returns still unfiled? Did you miss the deadline to file for an extension? Well, now that October 15th is behind us, the IRS may be ramping up enforcement. Let me tell you, they're not playing around. You could face wage garnishments, frozen bank accounts, even property seizures if you haven't taken action yet. But here's the good news. There is still hope. Tax Network USA has been in the game for years. They know exactly how to navigate the complex world of tax law. They've helped taxpayers save over $1 billion in tax debt. They've filed over 10,000 tax returns. That's billion with a B, folks. They specialize in helping hardworking Americans like you reduce their tax burden. So don't let the IRS catch you off guard. Get ahead of this right now with Tax Network USA. Their team of professionals will work tirelessly to protect your assets and find the best solution for your unique situation. Here's what you need to do. For a complimentary consultation, call today 1-800-958-1000 or visit their website at tnusa.com/Shapiro. That's 1-800-958-1000 or visit tnusa.com/Shapiro today. Don't let the IRS take advantage of you. Get the help you need with Tax Network USA. Meanwhile, on the left side of the aisle, they're still coming to grips with the fact that President Donald Trump will be re-entering office in January. The panic is palpable among a certain class of people on the left. CNN Bill Weir, who is one of the alarmists with regard to climate change. He's written entire books about how basically he has changed his life and he's not sure he could have babies in this terrible world in which climate change is going to be. So Bill Weir was on CNN claiming basically the earth is going to burn to a crisp because of Donald Trump.
Take a look at this temperature chart, Sarah. This year, 2024, according to Copernicus, the European Space Union, will shatter all records, being the warmest ever. And it's the first year where we've blown past the 1.5 degrees Celsius or 3 degrees Fahrenheit limit of the Paris Climate Accords. Every country in the world says we're going to try to hold the line at 1.5. And now we're here, just as maybe the most notorious climate denier in history takes power once again.
Again, these people, they're so, let's be clear. The United States' emissions have been dropping. It is China and India that continue to skyrocket. And no matter how much the United States destroys its own economy on behalf of people like Bill Weir, it ain't going to be enough. The freak out is everywhere. It is everywhere. The New York Times has a hilarious piece today titled, quote, "A sex strike is a losing strategy for American women." So apparently there are a bunch of left-wing women who are now declaring a sex strike, which, I mean, I hate to break it to you, ladies, but you might not have had a choice in the matter, depending on exactly who you are anyway. But according to this opinion staff editor for the New York Times, quote, "No dating men, no sex with men, no heterosexual marriage, and no childbirth. These are the 4 principles of South Korea's 4B movement, a radical feminist movement that gained popularity in 2019 in response to sexism, hidden camera pornography, and intimate partner violence. After Donald Trump's victory, some American women have sought out the movement. But it would be a mistake for women in the United States to adopt its principles, which risk alienating those who would be our allies while ensuring little actually changes about our reality. Some American women are already devising plans to apply used menstrual pads to trucks with MAGA stickers and undergo voluntary hysterectomy surgery. TikTok and Instagram reels related to the 4B movement gained millions of views this week. Google searches spiked in the U.S. on Wednesday, most notably in Democratic states. Yeah, good luck with this, ladies. Seriously. Good luck with it. By the way, I have a recommendation. In fact, I hope that people all over the spectrum would take this recommendation. Everyone should go on a sex strike until they get married and then enter a committed relationship and have children. We could call it traditional values. It'd be great. Then you wouldn't be having sex with people who disagree with you about values. You wouldn't be having sex with randos in the first place. It might be awesome. You should try it. Might help society, actually. Or you can continue to pretend that you're acting out Lysistrata or something. Meanwhile, over at the DOJ, they're freaking out, according to Politico. A collective sense of dread. Again, the leftist tears, they're just overflowing here. A collective sense of dread has taken hold at the Department of Justice, which drew Donald Trump's rage like no other part of the federal government during his campaign. By the way, why would that have been? Why did the DOJ draw his rage? Could it have been because they launched 3 cases against him while he was president of the United States, like the former president of the United States? Maybe that would be the reason. I don't know. Just putting it out there. Maybe it's that the DOJ kept targeting him over absolute nonsense with cases that certainly did not meet legal scrutiny. Maybe that's why he was pissed. I don't know. I love it when they declare that Donald Trump just he's like random Hulk. He just randomly goes Hulk on the DOJ. Maybe if you hadn't targeted him over, say, classified documents, maybe if you haven't targeted him over January 6th and all of the rest of it, maybe then he wouldn't be so mad at you. But now he's mad at you and you kind of deserve it. Some career attorneys at DOJ are already considering heading for the exits, rather than sticking around to find out whether threats from Trump and his allies are real or campaign bluster. Those threats range from mass firings of deep state lawyers to expelling special counsel Jack Smith from the country. Everyone I've talked to, mostly lawyers, are losing their minds, said one DOJ attorney. The fear is that career leadership and career employees everywhere are either going to leave or they're going to be driven out. Well, I mean, we can always dream. We can always hope. So again, it is amazing to watch people freak out. Like, they're basically saying our ability to watchdog the person we work for is going to be hampered if he comes into office. So there's a lot of speculation about who precisely is going to be heading up the DOJ, who will be the Attorney General pick. Remember, this is a Senate-approved position. It is worth noting at this point, by the way, that in the Senate, because Republicans are likely to end with 53 votes in the Senate, there are 3 senators in particular who may not greenlight everything that Trump does in terms of cabinet picks. Right? You do have Susan Collins up in Maine, you do have Lisa Murkowski out in Alaska, and you still have Senator Mitt Romney in Utah. That takes the Republican majority down to 50. So all you have to do is peel off one more, and suddenly Trump doesn't have the votes to necessarily confirm his nominees. So, this is a major issue, and it does depend who Trump nominates. With all of that said, do I think that Donald Trump is going to select somebody for AG who's going to expel Jack Smith from the country? No, I really don't. All of this hysteria is so overwrought. It really is. And we got a lot of this pre-election. People saying, well, now that Donald Trump has alienated all of his former staff and colleagues, it'll only be the dregs who will staff up. That's not what I'm seeing. Tom Homan doesn't look like the dregs to me. Neither does Elise Stefanik. In fact, the vast majority of people who are being mentioned for the Trump administration look like pretty good folks to me, actually. Meanwhile, the other aspect of hysteria is denial. It's fun to watch Democrats just deny what's going on all around them. Nancy Pelosi is still blaming Joe Biden. Of course she's blaming Joe Biden for Kamala Harris's loss. She can't blame herself. She's the one who ousted Joe Biden in favor of Kamala Harris, who then proceeded to lose to Donald Trump. Here's Nancy Pelosi over the weekend.
The fact is, she did a great job with the time constraint that she had. Had the president gotten out sooner, there may have been other candidates in the race. Kamala, I think, still would have won, but she may have been stronger, having taken her case to the public sooner.
Should there have been an open primary, though?
Well, see, we thought that there would be. The anticipation was that if the president were to step aside, that there would be an open primary. And as I say, Kamala I think she would have done well in that and been stronger going forward. But we don't know that. That didn't happen. We live with what happened. And because the president endorsed Kamala Harris immediately, that really made it almost impossible to have a primary at that time.
I love this. So Pelosi is not just blaming Biden for not leaving soon enough. She's now blaming Biden for endorsing Kamala Harris, which is something large swaths of the Democratic Party upper echelon wanted, because it meant that the Democratic Party snapped into place with $1 billion behind her. And then she proceeded to blow it. By the way, speaking of blowing through money, there is a report from Fox News that Kamala Harris paid Oprah Winfrey's Harpo Productions $1 million on October 15th. Winfrey appeared throughout the campaign. She did a star-studded town hall for the vice president in September. She also appeared at Harris's final rally in Philadelphia. And apparently, again, $1 million was paid. Not only that, the Washington Examiner, which is actually, they do amazing reporting, the Washington Examiner, they're revealing that the campaign spent big on the Call Her Daddy podcast. Remember that one? That's supposed to be the big winner for Kamala, where she went and she sat with the oral sex lady to talk about all of her views on politics. Apparently, the campaign spent money on that. They spent 6 figures building a set for Harris's appearance on the popular Call Her Daddy podcast. By the way, I'm looking at that set. That don't cost 6 figures. I'm sorry. We have sets all over the place here at Daily Wire. Next time, take a competitive bid, lady. I mean, my goodness. Look at this set. It's like a wall that says Call Her Daddy and some photos stacked up in the back. That's like the whole set. I could make this set myself. I'm no jack of all trades when it comes to handiwork. I could make this set myself for under $20,000. I mean, I'm looking at that set. That's ridiculous. But of course, she was supposed to be amazing at this, and then it turns out she was not. And yet, people still can't believe she lost. Charlemagne the God. Again, I think that if you botch an election this badly, then the description, the God, ought to be removed from your name. Charlemagne says, Kamala Harris ran a great campaign, which is weird because she lost to Donald Trump, I noticed.
Have you talked to her since the loss?
No, I haven't, but I can't wait to.
What are you going to tell her?
I'm going to tell her I love her, I value her, I appreciate her, and, whatever she plans to do moving forward, I'm going to always support her, and I'm going to say what I've, been saying on the radio and on my podcast, that she has nothing to be ashamed about. She ran a great campaign and only had 100 days to do it. Nobody thought she could even do what it is that she did. The first day getting all the delegates in line, raising the money that she raised, digging the campaign out of a hole to where they were neck and neck on election day. And she inspired a lot of people.
Yeah, so she inspired so many people that she ended up losing pretty much everywhere and winning fewer votes than Joe Biden pretty much everywhere. My favorite part of this particular interview on ABC News with John Carl is where Charlemagne the God, again, his appellation, the God, ought to be removed because apparently his omniscience is clearly in question here. He's told that Donald Trump won 1/3 of minority votes, and he can't believe it. His head basically explodes live on camera.
What do you make of the demographics here? I mean, Trump got 1 out of every 3 voters of color.
No.
Yeah.
1 out of
33%.
No. Really?
Yeah.
When you say color, you mean like black, brown, everything? Oh, well, I think that, people have different issues that they care about. And I think that there's nobody out there that's a single issue voter. I think some of this is a backlash to race and gender and identity politics. But, man, most people, they just care about keeping food on their table and keeping a roof over their head. And I think sometimes people forget about that. I think that they forget about, the working class. And for whatever reason, Donald Trump speaks to the grievances of the working class in a real way.
Oh, man. I love that. I love that shock. That shock is just great. All right, in just a moment, we're going to get to an incipient backlash among Democrats. First, Am I Racist became the biggest documentary of the decade in theaters. It is now streaming exclusively at Daily Wire Plus. If you watched Am I Racist in theaters, thank you and congratulations. You're now part of history. But there's more to see, including a deleted scene with Matt Walsh as his beloved children's book character, Johnny the Walrus. Plus, behind-the-scenes footage where Matt reveals how he pulled off the biggest troll in history against the left. And yes, unfortunately for them, it was all very real. The only way to watch Am I Racist and get access to this exclusive content is with a Daily Wire Plus membership. If you're not a member yet, now's the time to join. Go to dailywire.com/subscribe. Use code Trump for 47% off a new annual membership. Well, folks, reality may be settling in certain parts of the Democratic Party, and it's interesting to see the Democratic Party go through these sort of spasms. They're fighting one another. They're sort of the more reasonable half of the party, and then there are the identity politics nut jobs, and they're all in a big scrum with one another right now. Donna Brazile, who used to be a member of Team Clinton, she says, listen, we need some introspection here. We blew it, obviously.
And the truth is, we should put it all on the table and have a great introspection as to what happened. What happened in New Jersey when Chris and I was sitting there on election night, and I'm looking at Chris like, hey, what's going on? What was going on in Minnesota? What was going on, of course, in Massachusetts and Rhode Island?
Which was Trump was doing better in all these
Trump
blue places.
improved not just his numbers in the battleground, which we were talking about on election night, 3 to 4 points. He also improved in inner cities. He improved in outer suburbs. So it looks like Trump ran the 50-state strategy that the Democrats used to talk about.
Okay, so, the thing they should be doing, obviously, is moderating. And you're starting to see a few of them say exactly this. Fareed Zakaria, he ripped into the Kamala Harris campaign for their illiberal positions and also their legal cases against Trump. Are they starting to see reality? By the way, that'd be good for the country. Now, as somebody who wants to see Republicans continue to win, because I have not yet tired of the winning, it would be good for there to be another party that's not insane in the country. That would be awesome, actually. Here's Fareed Zakaria.
Lawfare turned Trump from being a loser into a victim. And as his indictments grew, his campaign contributions surged and his poll numbers solidified. The final error is a more diffuse one, the dominance of identity politics on the left, which made it push for all kinds of DEI policies that largely came out of the urban academic bubble, but alienated many mainstream voters. There's an irony in claiming to be pro-Latino by insisting that people use the term Latinx, only to discover that Latinos themselves think the word is weird. This kind of obsession made Democrats view people too much through their ethnic or racial or gender identity, and it made them miss, for example, that working-class Latinos were moving toward Trump perhaps because they were socially conservative, or liked his macho rhetoric, or even agreed with his hardline stance on immigration. One of Trump's most effective ads on trans issues had a tagline.
Kamala is for they, them. President Trump is for you.
The problem is much deeper than simply one about nouns and pronouns. The entire focus on identity has morphed into something deeply illiberal, judging people by the color of their skin rather than the content of their character.
That is Fareed Zakaria speaking actual common sense. Now, there are some other members of the Democratic Party who are pushing this as well. They're saying that we need to stop focusing on the racial issues and start focusing on the economic issues. Obviously, Bernie Sanders is the one who's leading the way on this. He believes that if you just toss out some warmed over socialism, that will win the next election. Again, the reality is that if Democrats wish to win, what they need to do is go back to Bill Clinton's 1992 playbook. Bill Clinton is the last sort of traditional Democratic politician to win. Barack Obama was not a traditional Democratic politician. He ran in 2008 as a great unifier. He ignored every issue. And then he somehow was able to draw a victory out in 2012, despite being fairly widely unpopular. And Democrats have been trying to duplicate 2012 ever since, to their own great failure. What they really should be trying to do is re-embrace the sort of principles of Bill Clinton, which is centrism on economics, centrism on the border, centrism on foreign policy. And Bill Clinton was famous for triangulating. That's the thing they should be pursuing. They shouldn't be going all the way to the Bernie Sanders progressive left when it comes to economics. That is not a substitute for the sort of race centrism of the modern Democratic left. Here is Bernie, though, trying to push the idea that if you run as a communist, you'll win.
Bottom line, if you're an average working person out there, do you really think that the Democratic Party is going to the mats, taking on powerful special interests and fighting for you? I think the overwhelming answer is no, and that is what has got to change.
Okay, but by the way, Nancy Pelosi is not wrong when she then comes back at Bernie Sanders and she roasts him, saying, listen, you say that we abandon the working class. Like, where are you getting that?
The fact is that what we do, what our purpose is in the Democratic Party, is for America's working families. So since you pursue it, what? Go ask Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders has not won. Let me, with all due respect, and I have a great deal of respect for him, for what he stands for, but I don't respect him saying that the Democratic Party has abandoned the working class families. That's where we are.
I mean, there are a lot of Democrats right now who are basically saying that if we just run as economic populists, that's a cure-all. I don't think that works. I think that because the underlying sort of tension of economic populism for the left is that you are being victimized by a greater system and that thus government must step into the breach and fill every gap. I don't think most Americans are up with that. I really don't. I think most Americans want very simple things. They want to be able to keep the wealth that they make. Most Americans would like to be able to build generational wealth. Most Americans are not satisfied with a government handout or a government paycheck that Bernie Sanders wants to give them. Most Americans want to build the American dream. They want to have their hands involved in that building. And that means that they want to be able to actually build a life for themselves. That's the American dream. Bernie Sanders doesn't believe in the American dream. He believes stagnation through redistribution. That's what Bernie believes. So on an economic side, I don't think that that's going to work. What's certainly not going to work is doubling down on identity politics. And again, you can see the sort of radical break that's happening inside the Democratic Party right now. Mehdi Hasan, who when he's not spending time over the weekend justifying pogroms in Amsterdam, he was tweeting out, "Good job, white men and women," pointing out that white men and women voted overwhelmingly for President Trump. He apparently seems to ignore the fact that Latino men voted 50-47 for Harris, which is an astonishing statistic, by the way. That he tweets out, it's all about race. John Favreau over at Pod Save America tweeted back at him, "Do you think that this is in any way helpful or illuminating? You know who elected Trump? Everyone who voted for him, regardless of race, gender, ethnicity, age, or background. You know who didn't? Everyone who voted for Kamala Harris. We got to stop blaming entire groups of people based on their identity. That's part of how we got here in the first place," which is, I mean, honestly, clap, applause for John Favreau, who was part of the intersectional crew back when he was on Team Obama. Some people are starting, but they can't get away from it. They can't actually cut that part out of their own base. This is the problem. They are now in sort of a death grip, sort of a death embrace with the intersectional racial left. So Bernie Sanders, who was out there 1 second ago saying, we need to re-embrace economic populism, also can't just disown the wokeness.
The Democratic Party must continue to stand up against all forms of bigotry. And Democrats should hold their head high in saying, we led the fight for women's rights and to protect the woman's constitutional right for abortion. We led the fight for civil rights, for gay rights. That is something we should be proud of. But it's not either or, Chris, and this is the problem. You can do both. You could say that I'm for raising the minimum wage to a living wage, guarantee health care for all people, expanding Social Security. And by the way, I also support a woman's right to control her own body, etc. It's not either or. It's going forward in both directions.
Yeah, again, he's doubling down on the wokeness too. This, by the way, was the kiss of death for Bernie. Bernie tried to run as a woke candidate in 2020 against Joe Biden, and it didn't work because he couldn't out-woke Joe Biden on the racial side. I mean, and Democrats are still finding this out. So Seth Moulton, who's one of the few reasonable Democrats in Congress, Seth Moulton, he had said publicly that, maybe boys shouldn't be playing against girls in sports. In an interview with the New York Times, he said Democrats spend way too much time trying not to offend anyone rather than being brutally honest about the challenges many Americans face. I have 2 little girls. I don't want them getting run over on a playing field by a male or formerly male athlete, but as a Democrat, I'm supposed to be afraid to say that. And then he said, I stand firmly in my belief for the need for competitive women's sports, but limits on the participation of those with the unfair physical advantages that come with being born male. I'm also a strong supporter of the civil rights of all Americans, including transgender rights. Okay, but this led to a massive blowback. So Democrats were very angry at him. Salem City Councilor Kyle Davis called for Moulton to resign. Meanwhile, Massachusetts State Representative Manny Cruz suggested that Moulton's stance was, quote, a betrayal. Massachusetts State Senator Jamie Eldridge condemned the post and said, quote, do not abandon our values. So you're starting to see, again, this battle does not happen without some pain. Here is Seth Moulton saying, listen, the fact that there are Democrats who are fighting me on this underscores exactly why we got shellacked.
The point is that the backlash I've received proves my point that we can't even have these discussions as a party. I mean, the chairman of the Massachusetts Democratic Party wouldn't even return my phone call. And we've got to be able to have these debates. But instead, we have a wing of our party that shames us, that tries to cancel people who even bring up these difficult topics, and frankly, shames voters. This is the same group of people who told us to defund the police, who told us that there wasn't a problem at the southern border, who told us that inflation was transient, whatever that means, and who told us that Biden was just fine. And they're out of touch with voters. If we just listen to voters on all of these issues, they were telling us the truth.
I mean, that is exactly right. That's exactly right. Again, this process in the Democratic Party will bear a better Democratic Party. Again, as a Republican, I'm perfectly happy if they continue to kind of spiral into the dust, but I would prefer that there be 2 not insane parties in the United States. That would actually be good. Alrighty, guys, coming up, we'll get into who will lead the resistance on behalf of the Democrats. If you're not a member, become a member. Use code Shapiro. Check out for 2 months free on all annual plans. Click that link in the description and join us.